Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's Miracle of the Week with me, Mark Humphreys. This one is about the Virgin Mary defending the city of Constantinople, which I've decided to call by the invocation, Holy Mary, Mother of God. Or if, like me, you're Irish, you might think of this as Holy Mary, Mother of God, which is a phrase you might have heard if you watch the sitcom Father Ted, where Mrs. Doyle occasionally says that phrase, or if, like me, you happen to have an Irish mammy. Now, the circumstances that we're going to be looking at in this short video concern a crisis that engulfed the East Roman Empire at the beginning of the 7th century. In 610, when the Emperor Heraclius came to the throne after a bout of civil war, he was immediately confronted by a collapse of imperial authority in the eastern provinces, as a result of an invasion of those territories by the Persian king Khosrow II. Khosrow II's invasion led to catastrophic collapse of imperial control over a very short period of time. They lost control of provinces like Syria and Egypt. They also lost control of one of the empire's most holy cities, the city of Jerusalem. These invasions of the empire also reached the imperial capital itself. There were a number of invasions of Asia Minor, but in 626 there was a joint assault on the imperial capital at Constantinople by Khosrow II, allied with peoples who had been taking over imperial territories in the Balkans, the Avars and the Slavs. So in 626, the imperial city of Constantinople found itself besieged from the Asian side by the Persian forces of Khosrow, and from the European side by the forces of the Avars and the Slavs, led by their leader, the Khagan. Now, at one point, the Avars decided that the best way to prosecute the siege to a conclusion was to transport some of these Persian troops across the Hellespont, across the water from the Asian side to the European side. And at this point, there was a miraculous intervention, and things began to go horribly wrong for the Avars and the Persians, and began to go right for the Romans, just at a moment when it seemed like all hope was lost. And this was because of an intervention, a miraculous intervention by the Virgin Mary, the mother of Jesus, the mother of God. And this is reported for us in a contemporary source. It's called the Chronicon Paschale. It is a year-by-year account of the whole of history. It begins with tables calculating when Easter should be celebrated, which is why it is known as the Chronicon Paschale, which basically means the Easter Chronicle. It is written only a few years after the events that it described, and it describes how, during this siege, Constantinople was saved by the intervention, the miraculous intervention of the Virgin Mary. The author says, "It is good to describe how now too the sole most merciful and compassionate God, by the welcome intercession of his undefiled mother, who is in truth our Lady, Mother of God and ever Virgin Mary, with his mighty hand saved this humble city of his from the utterly godless enemies who encircled it in concert," that is reference to the Avars and the Persians, "and redeemed the people who were present within it from the imminent sword, captivity, and most bitter servitude." So a clear indication that the inhabitants of Constantinople expected their city to fall to these twin besieging forces. It's at this point that the author describes how the Avar leader, the Khagan, attempted to ferry Persian troops across from Asia to Europe to besiege the city. But at this point we're told that there was a divine intervention, and in the words of the chronicler, "at God's command, through the intercession of Our Lady, the Mother of God, in a single instant calamity at sea came to him." In other words, the transport ships were destroyed in a storm, and the threat posed by the twin siege was suddenly lifted. The author tells us further that the Avar leader was forced to retreat, and claims to quote what the Avar leader said at this moment. It said, the author writes, and this is what the godless Kagan said at the moment of the battle: "I see a woman in stately dress rushing about on the wall all alone." In other words, the Kagan says he had a vision of the Virgin Mary parading around the walls of Constantinople and defending the city from this siege by the Avars and the Persians. Now, it wasn't just at Constantinople that it was felt that the Virgin Mary was intervening in the defence of the empire. We're told in a later source written in the 9th century, but based on earlier sources, our later sources, a chronicle written by an individual called Theophanes, who writes a history of the world from creation. And it says that elsewhere in this conflict with the Persians in Asia Minor, the emperor's brother, Theodore, routed the Persians and slew a great many of them because of another divine intervention by the Mother of God, here called by her Greek title Theotokos. It is said that when battle was joined between the Roman forces under Theodore and the Persians, a storm of hail fell unexpectedly on the barbarians and struck down many of them. So another divine, miraculous intervention, preserving the Romans at this very low ebb of their fortunes. And when a couple of years later Heraclius was able finally to defeat the Persians, he regarded his victory as a gift from God through the intercession of the Virgin Mary. This again from the Chronicon Paschale is a letter written by Heraclius that was read out in the great palace church at the centre of Constantinople, the Church of Hagia Sophia, on the 15th of May, 628, which just happens to be the Feast of Pentecost, a really important date in the Christian capital. And it says that it contains a list of Heraclius's various campaigns against the Persians, and it says how through all these campaigns, and in his description of them, Heraclius signified how God and Our Lady, the Mother of God, collaborated with us and our Christ-loving contingents beyond mortal understanding, and how the god abhorred and execrated Chosroes, which is the Greek form of the name of Khosrow, fled our presence and was cast down. So in this major war between 610 and 628, it looked as if the Roman Empire might collapse under the twin assaults of the Persians and the Avars. Together they had managed to besiege the capital city at Constantinople, but on this occasion they were driven back, and the Roman sources themselves present this as a result of a miracle, of the defence of the city by the Virgin Mary, who, as we saw in the report of what the Kagan is supposed to have said, was seen parading around the city walls, defending the city from the empire's enemies.